안녕하세요. 좋은 하루 보내고 계신가요? 오늘은 저번 영상에 이어서 가상화폐 분야에 10년 이상 몸을 담으시고 세계에서 가장 먼저 가상화폐 거래소를 만들었으며 미국에서 비트코인을 온라인으로 살 수 있는 Virtual Bitcoin ATM도 창업한 마이클 보글의 인터뷰를 마저 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 오늘 영상에서는 비트코인 가격이 다시 한번 5배에서 10배 이상 뛰어오르게 만든 트리거 혹은 사건이 무엇이 될 것이며 비트코인이 정말로 코인 하나당 1억 원이 넘을 수 있을지, 만약 넘을 수 있다면 언제쯤 생각하시는지에 대한 디테일, 그리고 자사 코인을 만든 페이팔에 대한 생각과 비트코인의 가격이 오를 때 가장 큰 영향을 받게 될 코인베이스의 주가 변동에 대해서도 나누도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그러면 디스클레이머만 듣고 영상 바로 보도록 하겠고요. 여러분들께서 이 인터뷰를 쭉 보실 수 있도록 인터뷰 중간에 제가 관리할 수 있는 모든 유튜브 광고들은 삭제하도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 지금 무무에서 새로운 어카운트를 만들 경우에 무료로 주식을 16개나 주는 프로모션을 하고 있는데요. 어카운트를 만들고 100불만 디파짓 하셔도 주식 5개를 무료로 받게 되고 1000불을 디파짓 하시고 60일간 그냥 어카운트에 두시기만 하셔도 주식 15개를 무료로 받게 되고 5000불을 디파짓 하시고 60일간 어카운트에 두었을 때는 주식 15개와 구글이나 테슬라를 무조건 받게 된다고 합니다. 이렇게 주식 16개나 무료로 받을 수 있는 기회를 놓칠 이유는 없다는 생각에 여러분들과 이 프로모션을 나누고 있습니다. 자, 그 외에도 제가 진행하는 페이트리온 서비스를 통해서 15불에 매수한 테슬라나 87불에 매수한 엔비디아, 그리고 올해 초에 멤버들과 함께 90불대 매수한 아마존, 구글이나 7불에 매수한 팔란티어와 같은 장기 투자 종목들의 매수나 단기적으로 차트 분석을 통해서 리스크 테이킹을 가능한 적게 하면서 매달 수익을 챙기고 있는 트레이드들, 그리고 제가 보유한 주식을 단 한 주도 팔지 않고 프리미엄으로 수익을 내는 콜 옵션과 함께 격주로 줌 미팅을 통해서 마켓이나 제가 눈여겨보는 주식들에 대한 인사이트를 나누고 있는데요. 이런 서비스에 관심 있으신 분들께서는 아래 링크를 클릭하셔서 지금 같은 마켓을 함께 헤쳐나갔으면 좋겠습니다. 제가 만든 컨텐츠들은 어디까지나 정보 전달을 위한 영상들이기 때문에 절대 영상만 보시고 주식들을 매도하지 마시기 바라고요. 본인 스스로 반드시 리서치를 더 하신 다음에 판단을 내리시기 바라겠습니다.
For Bitcoin, it's not like a company where a company develops and grows over time on its own. But for Bitcoin, since it's not a farm or a company that keeps growing over time, and I think that's why Buffett and Charlie Munger says that Bitcoin is a scam and will eventually go to zero, since they do not have any intrinsic values, but just waiting for another person to buy the Bitcoin at a higher price. I would love to hear your opinion on these statements and where you see the actual value is for Bitcoin.
I agree in the sense that Bitcoin will either go to infinity or zero. These are the only two outcomes. Bitcoin doesn't just kind of stay at 30,000 forever, right? One of those two outcomes have to happen. What's a scenario where Bitcoin goes to zero? Okay, well, let's say Bitcoin is copied and there's Bitcoin 2.0, and let's say that all the money goes somewhere else. So I think that's more difficult than people assume. So like, it's almost like saying, okay, what if someone else were to copy Google or copy Facebook or copy Apple? There's a massive network effect behind Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more than a decade old at this point. So there's a lot of history behind it. It hasn't been hacked. The protocol, every 10 minutes, the blockchain updates, and that's happened reliably since 2009-ish. It needed that history for, I'll say, the smart money or the big money, Wall Street, BlackRock, right? They're not going to get interested in a product that is 2 years old. And in fact, Wall Street derided Bitcoin for so long, right? There are lots of people, lots of examples that I can give of individuals on Wall Street that have, spouted about Bitcoin's downfall and maybe even wished for it. But so much time has passed that it hasn't gone away. Will Bitcoin be the one that lasts in the end? I can't say for sure, but it's certainly looking that way. And with every passing block that's added to the blockchain, it becomes less likely. The network just becomes more and more robust. So is Bitcoin a company? No, it's Bitcoin is an asset, not a security. It's a system, and its value is in large part derived by the user base behind it, where Bitcoin has gone through kind of every 3 or 4 years, that user base 10x's, right? And just like Facebook or Google, right? When you have the whole world or a large portion of the world using a particular product, it becomes very hard to disrupt or challenge that system. That's how I see that.
But I guess you're saying that for these institutions to even file for an ETF, they were waiting for the history of at least a decade to see how the asset works. And then I guess is now saying that they would be, comfortable enough to file for an ETF, which I think is getting denied by the SEC, but at least they're trying, and I think it will get approved in the future.
Yes, exactly. It's something that I think people that have been in the crypto industry for a long time thought would happen one day, but just didn't know when. And it even surprised me, right, that they were announcing this now, right, when Bitcoin is, I'll say, relatively unpopular. If anything, they might be doing it just because they're trying to build positions. They almost regret that they weren't involved in the last market cycle. That's a possibility as well. But yeah, Bitcoin is definitely a disruptive force. Things have really evolved. That's just part of any kind of new and growing technology. I've heard it described with like the early days of the internet. It took about a generation for someone's grandmother to be on Facebook, right? From the beginning of the World Wide Web, right? Like early 90s. If Facebook were to launch in 1994, there just weren't enough people on the internet for it to be kind of mainstream. So these types of new technologies take time to adopt. Human nature, things just take time for people to accept and be comfortable with it.
Now you say that, I was also curious, PayPal is a company that I'm personally investing right now with the all-time low. But recently PayPal came out with its own stablecoin, which I think surprised a lot of investors. But I would really love to hear your thoughts on this move that PayPal has made. I think trying to get their feet wet in the crypto industry, because I think they do see the huge potential in the crypto space.
I think it's such a smart move that PayPal did that. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I'm sure banks and credit unions, other financial institutions are looking at that, also surprised, intrigued why they're doing that, and also seeing how that plays out. Because PayPal is a huge company, I think maybe 400 million users, like the size of a country. That's a lot of users. So I think exposing that user base to a cryptocurrency is very cool. The importance of PayPal offering this type of product, I think, increases the likelihood that Facebook or Meta would eventually launch this type of product as well, because Meta is another example of a company with a user base bigger than any country, independent country on earth, right? We're talking about billions of users, right? Imagine if they offered their own currency, instant settlements on Saturdays, on weekends, 24/7. I think a PayPal USD coin makes a lot of sense, and you don't have to be a crypto person to be interested in that. That's probably the most interesting thing about the PayPal launch, is that we've seen a lot of products launched for crypto people, for Bitcoin people, but this is a product that is not aimed at crypto people. This is a product aimed at everyone. Everyone, if they're working, they get paid. If they are an employer, they pay people, they pay suppliers, right? This is how the financial system works. Money moves, right? If you can make it easier for money to move, then that solves a big problem. And I think that's why PayPal has gone into it, and I'm glad they did.
Talking about another company, so there's like two companies that I really like in the crypto space that IPO'd or in public. But I know that Coinbase is one of the companies that dominate the crypto space. Do you see Coinbase still being the major exchange in the future that cannot be replaced by, let's say, a decentralized exchange? And do you think that Coinbase stock would move correlated with the price of Bitcoin and therefore have, a lot of room to move up once the next Bitcoin halving cycle begins? And personally, one more question is, I'm really curious to hear how high you think a Bitcoin price can go up, since, like Kathy Wood is saying, a Bitcoin could bypass $1 million, but just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Coinbase traditionally has traded as a proxy to the price of Bitcoin, regardless of what they do. Yes, the markets aren't overheated right now, and I think they said their user bases are down. But yeah, since they've IPO'd, they typically trade as a proxy to Bitcoin. Will Coinbase be the de facto crypto exchange in the future? I think the role of crypto exchanges is evolving over time. Coinbase has a lot of history behind it. I can see them pivoting to be more of a kind of a backbone custodian, which they kind of already are, right? Like these Bitcoin ETFs. Who's holding the Bitcoin? Coinbase. Coinbase is the proposed custodian for many of these Bitcoin ETFs. So I think their role changes. Will we see a day where banks allow people to buy and sell and withdraw Bitcoin? The buy and sell, probably. The withdraw, we may have to wait a little bit for that. But I think also, is there room for competition in 2023, 2024? Definitely. It's not too late to start a Bitcoin company or a crypto company. And then your second question, will Bitcoin go to 1 million, 10 million, infinity? Is Kathy Wood right? Is Kathy Wood wrong? Well, let's take a step back. So the nice thing with Bitcoin is that we don't have with the US dollar or most fiat currencies around the world. We know that there are 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be in existence. We don't know how many US dollars will ever be in existence. It's unpredictable. More dollars are printed or the currency is inflated every year, right? It has been for a long time. If we know that the US dollar will inflate over time, we know that, let's say Bitcoin does last 100 years or more. Because we know that the US dollar will inflate over time, we know that assets will become more expensive over time. So like, for example, a house in 1950 in the United States, maybe it cost $10,000 to buy. I'll just throw out a number, right? Whereas in 2023, that same house in California and New York may cost $2 million to buy. Has the value of that house really changed over the last 70 years? No. It's just that the dollar has devalued so much that you need to use, it's now taking you $2 million to buy that same house. The dollar has become so much more worthless. So if we look at Bitcoin as an asset, does that mean that at some point 1 Bitcoin will be worth 1 million? Okay, yes. Mathematically, yes, it will have to be worth 1 million over time, just by that very law of assets costing more over time. Okay, so we have that kind of addressed. Now, will Bitcoin hit $1 million, let's say, over the next decade? Okay, that's different because now we're not considering inflation as much, because most likely the US dollar won't inflate 90% over the decade. So that means that it will require some other factor for Bitcoin to reach 1 million. Okay, what would it take to do that? The only metric we really have is through crypto exchanges, right? Crypto exchanges are where transactions take place, people buy and sell, right? Without crypto exchange, we wouldn't really have a basis for the spot price of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin continues on its mission and delivers, and people accept it as a store of value, as a reliable store of value, if it does fulfill that mission of being a reliable store of value, it's not like it has to replace gold or the US dollar or the stock market for that to mathematically happen. Like I said, there are only 21 million individual Bitcoins in existence. So we can mathematically see if the user base is large enough, then in theory, the price would have to reach 100,000, 500,000 or more. But like I said, and also for your viewers, this is not financial advice. Mathematically, there is a scenario where it could happen, is what I'm trying to say. Will it happen? I can't say. I would also caution people not to focus too much on the price, because if you do, you'll see what we saw in previous cycles, market cycles, where Bitcoin tends to do really well and then crash really hard. So, if someone were to ask, should I put all my money into Bitcoin because it's going to go to 1 million? I would caution someone from doing that, because yes, like we said earlier, it is still a very risky asset, the riskiest asset that you can hold.
Thank you very much again. I think we covered a lot of topics, and I think we got a lot of great insights from you. And I think my subscribers have learned a lot, including myself, just through this interview. So again, thank you very much for your time, Michael. And I would actually love to have you as a guest again as we get near the Bitcoin halving event, or if we start seeing some significant moves in the crypto space. So again, thank you very much for your time. And I'm looking really forward to seeing you again on our, future next interview.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. Yeah, looking forward to it as well. Happy to come on anytime.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael.
조금이라도 도움이 되셨다면 주위 분들과 나눠주셨으면 너무 고맙겠고요. 구독과 라이크를 해주시면 더욱 감사하겠습니다.